Few weeks before the trip, you get a more detailed itinerary. This includes the hotels. I looked up each one to see if there was a pool and if it was indoor or outdoor. For me, not enough in indoor pool to bother taking togs. I don't know of anyone on my tour who did use the pools. This information also included details on all the optional activities and the cost. I googled each one, mostly on YouTube, and wrote a yes, no, or maybe against each. This helped me know how much cash to bring, as it also said these extras must be paid for in cash. This was not the case, but I don't know if it was just because Grace used her Alipay to help some people out. I ended up doing all my yes ones, and the maybe ones, and even one of the no ones. Grace was good at telling us what she thought of the extras. There was no pressure to do any, and she even told us one or two that weren't worth it. The only pressure was to make a decision so she could sort out the right number of tickets and time in advance, which was fair enough. My itinerary was going from Auckland to Hong Kong and then Hong Kong to Beijing. The flight was quite late leaving Auckland, and I could see the time in Hong Kong to get to the next flight shrinking. However, the pre-tour information from Wendy Wu said my guide was Grace and also gave me her phone number. I had already put this into WeChat as a contact. However, when I got off the plane, several people from Cathay Pacific were there holding signs with people's names on them with their next flight. There were 3 or 4 names as well as mine on the same flight to Beijing. The woman then, with the sign, took us through the airport, zigzagging straight to the gate that we needed. I joined the queue to board, and then I was away. The flight to Beijing was not my favourite. I'm not tall, and my knees touched the seat in front. Now that's never happened. It was a large, full plane, and there was no meal. The much shorter flight later from Shanghai to Beijing had plenty of legroom and a lovely meal. Both were Cathay Pacific. After leaving the plane, you go through follow the crowd, and then to immigration. The closer you get, there are signs saying foreigner. So I continued to follow those. Now, there were no immigration cards provided on the plane. However, I found one and filled it out at a desk. It asked me what cities I was staying in. Although I had the itinerary, I didn't know if each destination where we were staying was a city or not. I just wrote Wendy Wu Tour, and that seemed to work. I then followed the one-way route, expecting to see a baggage hall, following the signs, but instead found a train. The terminal is so far away, it's a train trip. Google tells me it's about 1 to 1.5 kilometres. So I collected my bag, then I had to choose a gate, something to declare or nothing to declare. Now I was a bit confused as there was no customs card to fill in or signage to tell me what was declarable and what was not. As I was looking puzzled, pretty much the only person there that late at night, the guy waved me over to the bag x-ray machine in the something to declare section. It went through and I was on my way out. Outside at the gate, there was a woman with a sign with my name on it. She spoke English and led me to a taxi or ride service. I was then on my way to the hotel. It took around half an hour in low traffic. I started to check in, and I think they must have rung Grace, our guide, as she came down and introduced herself. I didn't really need any help with the check-in. It was around 11:30 at night by this time, and it was a nice touch, even though I'm sure I could have checked in fine by myself. We stayed at the Poly Plaza Hotel. The room was fine, clean, but quite dated. A few broken tiles, but it was nice not to be moving after a while. Now, the way the flights worked, I had arrived a day early and had a day to myself in Beijing before everyone met for dinner on day 2. So, yes, I paid for that extra night beforehand. Now, the Windy Woo tour really started on day 2 with the dinner that night, and I had a day to myself before that, which I've been planning. I wanted to go to the National Museum. It's free, but the tickets are very limited. I worked out, or rather, ChatGPT did, what time in New Zealand the tickets opened for that day, and I was right ready. I had the site bookmarked, the English one, so it was quick and mostly easy. Now, for this, have your passport handy as you need the number. Just in case I was exhausted, I got an afternoon ticket. For the morning, I found a free walking tour with guru walks, the ones where you give a donation at the end. This means I could cancel if I found I needed some sleep. I was fine and was in the hotel foyer in plenty of time. I asked one of the hotel staff to help me with the Didi, their rideshare app, to get me to the start. I showed them where I needed to go, and they put the details into Didi, which is only in Chinese. So and sorted that out. They then showed me where in the app to see the license car plate number, and they also waited with me outside the hotel to make sure I got into the right one. That was great service. I had brought some New Zealand key rings and things with me as gift for kids, but later gave them some. I chose the walking tour called Beijing Free City Walk, as it finished outside Tiananmen Square, which is also where the museum is, so I didn't have to end up getting from one place to another. You can look up the tour details for yourself on the Guru website, but I found it fun and interesting. Our guide spoke excellent English. Someone asked her how she spoke so well. She said her parents thought it was important, so they sent her to an international secondary school, which was all in English. The tour was centred mainly around a particular hutong, which are old parts of town with narrow alleyways. Many are being preserved from development, which is great. One we were at was walking distance from Forbidden City and Tiananmen Square, so right in the middle of Beijing, prime property. Every hotel seemed to have one of these, a fire escape hood. I thought it unusual. This was from a local newspaper that I read over breakfast in English. The Hutong walking tour was mostly alleyways and doors. But there were some nice doors, and they did explain the meaning of the various items around the door and the stoop, the lines to either side, and the like. Some everyday scenes. They did also take you to a particular shop or two. This was actually quite a nice one. Opposite, there was this very unusual shop. They had these dresses made of old ceramics. I'm not into dresses, but I would wear these. They were great. This is a map on a wall, a mural of old Beijing. We also found some lunch on our walking tour. There was a few stalls, and our guide helped us make a decision as to what we liked. I had this, which is the sort of tasty meat in a bread thing. She also took us to a particular coffee shop. I did not find this cheap at all, but it did amuse me. The coffee free section, it wasn't free, it was just drinks without coffee, hot chocolates, teas, and the like. This is silver, which is actually a coinage from the old days, I'm told to believe. This is a street in one of the smallest streets in Beijing. After that walking tour, our guide pointed me in the direction of the museum, and off I went. Google Maps helped with the VPN and eSIM local data, but it was around a 45-minute walk. I think I had to walk around half of Tiananmen Square. You need a ticket for that now, so you can't cross right through it. At the museum, I went to the most popular section first, Ancient China. Now, there's plenty of stuff on the internet about what's there, check that out. It was really crowded, really, really crowded. The most popular item was the Phoenix coronet. Look at that on YouTube somewhere else. To see this, there was a separate queue, and it took about 20 minutes to see that. Now, it's an amazing thing. Please don't skip it just because of that queue. After this section, I went to one that was all about the early communism days. This was not crowded at all. Interestingly, many kids and youngsters were getting their friends to take photos with them of some of the famous flags. Some of the flags are way too big for selfies. There's also a lovely shop there on the way out, so do leave some time for that. There were some blossoms on the way to the museum to see. This was their real colour, I haven't modified. Some ancient artefacts from the museum. I haven't included information about them. This was cute, a little funerary procession model, I believe. This was great. It was a water clock. So the water goes from bucket to bucket to bucket, and they then know what time it is. I thought that was quite clever. This is the Empress coronet. that you'd really need to see. The detail, especially. It must have taken so long to make. This is the communist area where they have highlights of the revolution, including various paintings and, as I mentioned, various flags, um, which had a famous place in the revolution. This is a very big flag, and these kids were lining up to get their photo taken in front of it. After this, I went for a wander around, in particular looking for the nearby Wang Fujing Street that has all the big flagship stores. I looked at Nike and some of the other sports ones, but their prices were really expensive, much more than home. They definitely had a much bigger range though, but don't think you can go get there getting a bargain. I did enjoy the Lego shop. They had terracotta warriors and Chinese specific things. Great for a photo. After another wander around, it was time to head back. I asked a few officials to point me to a taxi stand using my translator app. I found a taxi. He had some English and was very keen to take me to the foreigners' market. I said no. This was an official taxi. However, when I went to pay, he covered the meter with his hand and pointed to the clock, with the wrong time on it, to show me the price. I was not fooled. I just put the right amount from the meter into Alipay and processed it. It came through at his end, and he pressed a button then to unlock the car doors. I hadn't realised they were locked. The taxi cost maybe 30% more than the DD, but I couldn't really make a comparison. I was in a very different location. I freshened up and then met Grace again and the rest of the tour group at the appointed time, ready for dinner. She walked us to a local restaurant and we had our first meal together. When I came out of the museum, this was the site towards Tiananmen Square. And looking back at the museum, and of course the shops, have very familiar faces at times. This was the Lego shop. And you can get your photo taken here too, but don't sit on a chair. And the Nike shop. It was huge and a quite interesting building, but yeah, as I said, not cheap. I don't know what this is, but it was a very interesting light show in the shop.